I was in hell until God rescued me. Here's how it happened. This is not just a regular near-death experience. Since a 30-minute on Earth is approximately 3 days there, I will only share with you the important parts of the story. After collapsing dead, of which I was not aware of as it must have been rather sudden, the entire events of my life went through my mind in an instant. I would say this process took less than a second, a fraction of a second. It was rather complete as it reminded me of many things I had entirely forgotten about years prior. Immediately after this, some mechanism in my mind triggered automatically that caused me to involuntarily judge myself. There was no rational or conscious though to this whatsoever. It was instant and involuntary, as if an unknown program in my mind had suddenly activated and executed. The judgment must have been bad because of what happened next. I do not actually know what the judgment of myself was, since there was no inner voice speaking, or any sort of way of knowing internally. Immediately, I fell through the earth, as if the earth were no longer solid and I were skydiving or something. I do not really know how to put this experience into words, as there is nothing I can draw upon to explain it, except to say that I literally fell through the soil, rocks, minerals, water, etc. It was not so much a tunnel as just literally passing through the solids, which at this point were anything but solid. As if the bonds of the atoms making of the earth were of no consequence, and I simply passed through it. I could see rocks, grains of sand, soils, etc. passing through my eyes. Although I could sense the things passing through me, there was no friction and no pain. It was, however, rather terrifying. After what seemed quite some time falling, I slammed into a floor in the hallway. This hurt very bad, and the floor was extremely hard and flat and very cold. After I managed to regain my composure and stand up, I realized I had hit a highly polished green marble floor within a hallway leading as 2 directions lined with doors on both sides. The walls of the hallways were also covered in the same green marble tiles. These tiles were quite large in size, being something like 28 to 36 inches square. They were highly polished, as if perfectly smooth, even smoother than fine glass and highly reflective. The hallways was well lit and evenly lit, even though I saw no lights anywhere. At this time I was very confused and very panicked. I ran down one direction the hallway only to find no end, and just more and more doors lining the hallway. So I decided to open a door and see if I could figure out where I was and what was going on. Behind this door was an empty room, except for a woman and a toilet in the middle of the room, and she was cleaning the toilet while on her knees. She was dressed in worn and dirty clothes, and she ignored me until I spoke to her. I asked her who she was, where I was, and what was going on. She told me to go away and leave her alone. She then said, "He is always watching. Go away." I asked her to stop and talk to me, and she said, "I can't." I asked he to please stop what she was doing and explain to me what was going on. She simply said, "He is always watching. I must clean the toilet." I again asked her to stop, and she said she could not, and to leave immediately. I went to another door down the hallway and opened it, and there was a man strapped to what looked like a barber's chair being force-fed food by 3 women. The man was unable to speak as his mouth was never empty of feed being shoved into his mouth. There was a table next to the chair full of food, and as the women picked up more food and forced into the man's mouth, then new food would appear on the table to replace what had been taken and used. One of the women yelled at me to leave. I asked what was going on and where was I, and the woman shouted, "You don't know!" and laughed at me. She told me, "He is always watching and we can't stop," and told me to leave, shouting at me. I ran again quite some distance, but the hallway did not change. Just endless green marble and doors on both sides. I finally opened a third door to find another man strapped to a chair with 3 beautiful naked women dancing around him as if they were teasing him. I tried again to find out what was going on, but the women ignored me and the man was unable to speak as his mouth was gagged. So, I again ran down the hallway, deciding in my mind that if I continued in the same direction, then at some point, I would reach an end or junction or something. I ran very far, but I was unable to find an end to the hallway, or to the doors that lined the hallway. I reached a point of physical exhaustion, and stopped when suddenly a man appeared. He was about 6 foot 2 inches tall, had jet black hair and white skin. He was dressed in a fine suit and black tie. He opened a door next to us, and asked me to step into the room with him, and that he would explain everything to me. I walked into the room, and the first thing I noticed is that this room was about 3 or 4 times the size of the previous rooms I had seen. The room contained 2 chairs and a very long banquet table, with nothing but a white tablecloth on the table that ran the entire length of the table. He asked me to sit down, so I took a chair. He looked at me and asked if I knew who he was. When this man spoke, it was the best use of language I had ever heard a person use in my life. This man was obviously extremely skilled in language and words, his use of language of comforting and soothing. In addition, this man was extremely good-looking and perfectly manicured/groomed, and his suit was very well tailored. I explained to him I have no idea where I was or how I got here. He said he wasn't expecting me, but was happy nonetheless to see me there. He wouldn't answer my questions about where I was, and instead brought up other things to talk about. He asked if I was hungry, and I said I guess so, but that is not what I was really concerned about at the moment. I turned and looked at the table, and it was full of food. The food was very fancy and looked amazing. He asked me to have something to eat and that he would explain everything to me. So not knowing what to do, I sampled some food. I do not remember exactly what I sampled, except I do remember it probably the best thing I had ever tasted. I asked him who the woman was that I saw in a room who was cleaning a toilet and why she wouldn't talk to me. The man said that no one in any room would talk to me as they are not allowed to. He explained that the woman was cleaning the toilet forever because the toilet never gets clean, and that one thing she really hated in life was cleaning toilets. I said, well, if she hates it, then why doesn't she just stop? The man said, she can't stop. I was rather confused. I asked about the man being forced to eat food continuously, and the other man with the 3 naked women dancing around him. The man said that the man being force-fed loved food much in life, and was glutinous, and the other man loved sex in life, and now would spend eternity looking at the most beautiful women, but never being allowed to touch them. The man asked me again if I knew who he was. I said no, but at this point I was getting very afraid, and things were not good, and things were looking very bad, and very weird. The man stood before me and announced that he was Satan, and he welcomed me to his palace. I immediately stood up and said to him I had to leave, and that I should not be here. Under normal circumstances, I would dismiss such a person as a lunatic, however. Given what I had seen thus far and given what I was feeling inside, I half believed this man. I ran out of the room and began running down the hallway again. The endless hallway. It felt futile, but I was scared and continued running. I could hear the man laughing behind me. Suddenly I could hear him in my head saying, "Where are you going? There is no escape." I ran and ran for what seemed like literally an hour or more, and then I finally found another hallway which was perpendicular, and also went in 2 directions, except that this new hallway was red marble. I began running down this hallway in one direction, hoping to find an exit, and all the while I could hear the man in mind saying things to me. I do not remember everything he said, as at this point I was in pure panic, just running and trying to get away. However, basically he was telling me that I could not escape from his palace, and that I could not stop from hearing his voice in my head and so forth. I ran for what seemed like a very long time until I came upon another junction where I stopped. This new hallways was white marble but had no doors on the walls. I paused for a brief time, then started walking down this white hallway, when suddenly something behind me started yelling at me to stop. I ran like hell as fast I could. This thing was chasing me down the hallway, and I had no idea what it was. It looked like a giant head with no legs or arms or body. As I ran down the hall, the white marble turned to white plaster, and as I continued to run, the white plaster walls began to appear to have body parts in the walls. As I ran farther and farther, it became apparent that there were people plastered into the walls, and they were still alive. Then the plaster turned into a flexible white material, that the people in the walls were trying to grab me. The thing chasing me down the hall continued to tell at me to stop, but I didn't. I finally came to the end of and it was a dead end. I was so scared, I actually ran straight into the dead, at which point I remember the pain of my face and body being pressed against the wall at the end of the hall. But before I fell down, the thing chasing me slammed right into the back of me, pushing me through the wall and into a complete darkness. The darkness of totally void of light. I could see nothing. I do not know if I was falling or floating or flying. I did not sense gravity anymore. I think at some point I became motionless. Then a white light appeared and came forth and complete engulfed me, and I found myself in a room, I think. I don't know where I was actually. It was like a room, but there were no walls or ceiling or floor, just this incredible white light everywhere. Then a different man came toward me and asked me to sit down, and suddenly a chair appeared behind me, and so I sat down. This man came and sat in another chair about 8 feet in front of me. He asked me if I was okay. I told the man I felt a lot of pain as I had just hit a solid wall and then was pushed through it, all the while feeling every bone in my body being snapped and crushed. Yet somehow, now I was all right. I seemed all right anyway. I asked the man who he was, and he said, "Well, first, don't you want to know where you were previously and who the other man was?" I said that he told me he was Satan, and this man said that was correct, and that I was in a part of hell. However, now I was safe. I asked where I was now, and the man explained to me that I was in a realm constructed so we could have a conversation. I asked who he was, and he said he was God. I didn't know what to think at this point. But I asked him why he saved me from hell, or if that was what he did. He said he did in fact save from hell, and that he saved me because he did not want me dead yet. In a nutshell, I spent approximately 2 days with God in this white realm talking to him. He allowed me to ask any questions I wanted to ask, and he gave the answers he wanted to give. He told me what happened to me and who it was that placed the drugs in my drink. He told me that he would repair my body and that I would feel no pain and I would be fine and to go home. At the conclusion of this, he told me that he wanted me to go to college and not stop until he told me to, and that he would speak to me again. I thanked him, and then I was suddenly back in my body. I woke up to find all my friends staring at me and then panicking. I got up and told them that, name omitted, had put drugs in my drink, and that none of them were my friends anymore. I asked them how long I was laying there, and they said about 30 mins, and that one of them ran down the mountain to go call the ambulance. We were up in the mountains at night hiking in the desert, because I did not breathe the entire time, and they couldn't get a pulse on me, or my heart beating, and I turned totally blue, and that they tried mouth to mouth but nothing worked. I said I was fine because God saved me, and I turned around and left and walked down the mountain by myself. And I've never had anything to do with those people again since. I went to university achieving 3 degrees with good grades and hardly any money. Prior to this, my college career was a disaster. At the conclusion of my last master's degree, God came and spoke to me again and told me I was done with my education. He has put me into service since doing other things he has wanted done, mainly passing messages to various churches for a while and speaking with various people. He and his angels periodically come and speak to me. I have seen the devil a second time as well, except it was on earth the second time, and he recognized me and was pretty angry about it, but left me alone knowing God told him to stay away from me. There are a ton of things that happened since this, as this experience has never really ended and is an ongoing thing. But this is basically what happened in the initial experience. I've also had to leave out a lot of details simple due to the length of the text. One important detail I should mention is that when I was in hell, I realized there is no escape because you can't kill yourself or be killed because you are already dead. That was the most frightening thing I've ever felt. That you can't even escape through death, and that Satan buries himself deep in your head the whole time and controls you like a puppet. Thank you.